Okay, hey everybody. We're back with another edition of Reimagining Content Layer. Today I've got Tim with me instead of Mike. We're streaming a little bit later in the day, but um, but yeah, I think um, the last time we left off, we had just finished up our document definition. I think we got to a pretty good place. So since this is Tim's first time on this streaming with us on this particular topic, I figure I'll catch him up while I catch everybody else up. But we had Mike and I had been working on a definition for documents in Contentlayer. Essentially, the idea was that you might have like a Contentlayer config file, and you just have documents that you define there and export from that file, and eventually the core engine would um, pick up those document definitions and like do whatever it needed to generate the content, blah 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 blah. But the idea was that with our document definitions, we wanted to first of all like make them schema centric. So the constructor for our initial documents would take in essentially a struct of schema fields, and like here's an example down at the bottom here of what defining a document might look like. So there's an author schema here, and then we use that author schema in our document definition. So we're creating a post document here. It's got a name, a description. We define a document source, which for now we just have like this mock file system source. And then the fields of the document. So this would be like the front matter in a markdown file or an MDX file. And essentially the schema, um, this like struct schema would allow us to, you know, encode and decode the fields of the document. And then we also added the ability to define computed fields. And we talked at length about this, but this essentially the computed fields can be added in groups. So I think I actually do a pretty good job of defining it up here. But the computed fields of a document uh, are grouped up into like sequential groupings. So every group of computed fields is resolved sequentially, so one group at a time. But the fields within each group can be resolved concurrently. So like the resolver for each field in a group could be processed concurrently if it's possible. Um, and then the benefit of doing it this way too is that for each group, once one group is processed, the next group gets access to those computed fields to do different things. So you can have computed fields that are actually like dependent upon each other. So like here, we're adding two computed fields in this group. We've got slug and slug2. And some of like the nice to haves that Mike and I worked on were that like if you define a field that already exists in the document, you'll get like these nice errors that I haven't updated the actual error that you get yet, but you get a error saying that like this key like shouldn't be there. There's like the for now Mike was making fun of me last time about using NeoVim. So that's why the error reads I hate my mouse. But it's kind of nice that you actually get like duplicate field errors basically. And then the other nice thing in here is that the schema that you define for computed field is actually enforced in the return type of the resolver. So if you like for example try to return a number here, you'll get you'll get an error. Oh my god. Um, saying that the whatever your return type was is not assignable to what I was expecting. So we had some kind of nice to haves. And then the third nice to have that we did was if we inspect the fields. So for in our first group of fields, we just have access to what we define on the document. But if we look at the fields for this second group of computed fields, we actually have access to the fields that were in the previous group of computed fields. Um, and then there is an argument in the resolve function that I'm not currently using, but we also get access to the metadata from the document source. So the document sources all have like this metadata property on them. So if we go to like the source file, why is this not happy? ESLint's not happy. But the documents sources essentially have this like metadata that they can define. And when you define a document with metadata, it's extractable within the actual document. So you can use the metadata from the document source to construct computed fields. Yeah. Questions about the document definition, Tim? Or suggestions? Things that we missed?
Not at this stage.
All right, cool. Very good. So I'll just make this, I'm going to comment this out for now. And
so what are we going to be looking at today?
Today, I thought we could take a look at, so we had started working on the Contentlayer config file, like basically reading it from the file system, watching it for changes, and essentially like trying to figure out how that was going to hook into the engine. So if we look at what we did last time, we created this little esbuild plugin layer thing, where essentially we have some esbuild build options that we could specify as a service, and we also have the esbuild layer itself. And the esbuild layer is basically just a plugin that we provide to we basically add to the like build option plugins. We just create like this plugin in line and add it to the build option plugins. And we're essentially like using this to watch the Contentlayer config file. Well, really it's like any file that we're passing in the options, but the idea is to use this for the Contentlayer config. And then writing any build results that we get to a queue that we can then make use of from within Effect. So essentially, like this is allowing us to take builds that we get from esbuild, put them into a queue that we can then use from within Effect. So cool. So now we were basically, so this like queue of results that we have here is essentially like an either we get like a build result back from esbuild, or we get this esbuild error. And once we had finished like working on this service, I mean, I'm sure there's like things we're gonna have to revisit here, but this was just like very basic implementation of like an esbuild watcher that we could use. And then we started looking at the actual config, which I started sketching something out here, but I'm not exactly sure where we want to take this. The idea here is that we want to be able to read the information that we're getting from our esbuild result and create the configuration for Contentlayer based off that, right? So we don't exactly know like what the Contentlayer config like data type is going to look like yet, but at a very minimum, when we get when we're like reading our queue of build results, at a minimum, I'm anticipating that we're going to want probably like an array of documents, because the Contentlayer config is going to be like the idea that Mike and I had was that the Contentlayer config is going to be exporting these documents just like as top level objects. So you'd have like from the Contentlayer config, you might export a post document, author, blog, docs page, blog post, whatever. You might export multiple different documents. So at a very minimum, this like Contentlayer, this like results queue here, which we're getting from our esbuild service, should be able to read those documents into like an array that we can then use.
Yeah.
Um, and the other thing that I was talking to Mike about was that it would be great if we could do this in such a way that the configuration that we generate from this service can be reloaded in the environment anytime the content layer config changes. But to like do that without affecting the esbuild watcher that we've already set up, right? Because we essentially trying to avoid reloading esbuild every time, which this currently does, right? Because I'm reloading the full live layer, so I probably should do something more like this. But um, the idea is like every time, like what I want to achieve here is that every time we get a new esbuild result here, which represents a change to the content layer config that the user made, every time we get a new build result, I'd like to reload the configuration service in the environment of the program so that we can basically do everything else that we need to do with the documents that we have, right? Like regenerate the documents, populate the cache, check if we need to, like, et cetera, et cetera.
I think we
So
just need a subscription ref, probably.
let's
Do
try
we have
this.
a
Uh,
uh,
for now.
yeah, so instead of q.offer, it would be subscription ref.set, I guess.
Let's do this.
And it would be an option of any, because you'll start out with an empty state. Option none. Yeah, that one.
For those of you who were here last time, you'll know that I'm still struggling. You'll be happy to know I'm still struggling with my NeoVim keybinds, but I've gotten a little bit better.
And then we can get rid of that queue. And I guess we can expose it as just a stream and then filter out the nuns or filter map it.
Oops. Stream.
Stream dot, that would be config dot changes. Yeah, and then filter map identity.
Filter map identity.
This, and we should have a stream of any now.
Cool.
Yep.
Um,
Actually, would we want to do that? Because when you're consuming this, what would it look like?
well,
I think
you're,
this
I
good
think
stuff.
that, I think that the, I think that, yeah, I mean, I think what we want to keep in mind is that, like, eventually this is going to be something that we reload, right? Maybe. I mean, we don't have to do it this way. We could do it using a subscription ref, which would negate the need for like reloading the layer. We could just watch the changes of the
Yeah.
we could do it in a streaming fashion that way. So let's actually get rid of this reloadable stuff for now. We'll abandon my idea. Um oh, that's where it wanted identity. Cool.
I guess if you think about the domain more, it's not a reloadable service, but it's kind of like reactive configuration. So I feel like a subscription ref is the right way of modeling it.
Yeah, I think that makes sense. We can go with that for now. I think that I like that idea, and I think it makes more sense. I feel like reloadable as a concept and effect is useful for a very small number of things. I think that it's most useful when you have a service that you want to reload on a schedule, because then
Yeah.
you don't have to manually reload. You can just use the auto reloading. Um,
Mm.
let's see if we can maybe sketch out a little bit of what the config will look like so we can get some types to help us. So, um, at a minimum, I want the config to have a read-only array. Maybe. I mean, I'm not 100% sure of this yet, but I think we probably want a read-only array of documents, and it's actually going to be, um, if we go back to, so wait, not that, this, and then if we go back to here,
Maybe if we work backwards from usage, we'd probably have like a constructor function like make config or something, or config.make, and then they would pass in this interface.
okay, so give me an
I'm just
idea of
thinking,
what you,
um, so when using this package, users will want type safe configuration, or they want to declare the configuration in a type safe way. And
well,
probably the best way to do that is providing some kind of factory.
the idea that is currently, that, in their like, assume that this is their content layer config file, right? So this is contentlayer.config.ts here,
Yeah.
right? Um, in their content layer config, they would essentially just be defining documents that are exported, and that's really it. This is their configuration. On the inside, the config service that we're working with here is not actually ever exposed to the user. This is more of like a engine level service. So the documents that we get are not going to be typed because they're going to be getting imported, which
But
is why we need to.
there'll be like more configuration options we want to add in the future. And by going with that pattern, you're kind of like limiting yourself in the future.
So yeah, so like then what are you thinking here?
I guess we could just do a default export in our configuration file, and then you like call some kind of like config.make constructor or something, and then it has a documents field.
So something like where you have, like, instead of exporting the documents directly, maybe at like the very bottom of your content layer config, you'd have like an export default, blah blah
Um,
blah,
yeah,
and
so,
in here there'd be like a documents where you'd pass.
so here you would call some kind of constructor that we provide, which provides type safety around, yeah. And then in the future, if we decide to add other configuration options, we just add it to that interface. Yeah, you just want to make sure, like in the future, we have some options, or
Yeah,
we
no,
have
this makes
to add options.
no, this makes sense. Um, this makes sense. So then, so then, well, then this like config service, I guess, shouldn't really be called config. Um,
It's like the config watcher
it's
or
just weird.
builder.
Let's call it config builder for now.
Yeah.
And then So the interface for
And if we add like a separate config module, which is responsible for the domain.
right, and actually let's move this there. So let's do config.ts. Um, damn it. I know that in Vim there's a way, or there's stuff to do find and replace, but I have enough keybinds I need to memorize right now, so don't at me. Uh, file has been changed since reading it. Yes, write it. So this is the config builder, and then I think I just wrote those changes to config as well. Yep. Let's just do this. Cool. So then config builder gives us like the thing that actually like reads from the esbuild results and puts config entries into a subscription ref, but the actual domain definition of the config will go in here. And so maybe we can just start sketching this out a little bit. So actually you said you wanted to do this from usage first, right? So
I will need this interface regardless, because it will just be an identity function essentially.
and actually we need to go over here because it would be nice if we had any helper for the document, because we can't have typed
Right.
documents after we export them. We need to rely on the schema that's inside them. So type any equals any any okay. Okay. And then we just have like a simple make, which is an identity. Um, actually, can I just do? So for now, it's just a simple identity, but maybe there'll be things we need to transform in the future. Actually, wait, we could do, no, this is fine. Okay, so going back to our config builder, we can now make this a
Config object.
is this going to be an option of config, or can we just have maybe we can have an empty config? No, that's not really useful.
I think an option of config is fine.
Big.
So we're getting
So
back the results.
yeah, I figure so in this I have this like build configuration function which can take in the esbuild result
Yeah,
and will produce us an effective config, I guess.
I guess we probably need to validate it somehow.
Yeah, there's definitely going to be some validation in here. Um, how do I do this? Shift R. No. There we go.
I guess the config constructor could add a symbol, and then we can just validate the symbols there.
It's a good idea.
That will save us from doing annoying kind of like structure checking.
Type ID symbol effect content. And Johannes, I actually confirmed with Johannes, but he was gracious enough to allow us to use the Contentlayer moniker for this project. So at some point, I'll go back and change all of our usage of effect content to effect Contentlayer because I think it's a great name. Config. Type.
I wonder if esbuild will preserve that, would we?
Well, won't we be adding it?
I guess
Oh, that,
because we're tying it to a string identifier, it should be the same symbol.
I guess we'll find out.
We will.
Slowly introducing interesting potential bugs.
So we want a config without the symbol and the config with the symbol.
Um, maybe raw.
Yeah. Must be.
Config.proto. Cool. And then make should add the symbol you said, right?
Yeah, so we'll take in a config.raw and then return config.
I will adjust that in a moment. As soon as I remember all my keybinds. I have thoroughly been enjoying Neovim so far.
Nice.
Config.raw.
There we go.
But there are certain things I'm still not great at. Like I still need to learn how to navigate between files and open tabs and search buffers and move stuff around a little bit better, but one keybind at a time. All right. Let's see.
Don't forget the save.
Let's see. So now if we go back to config builder. So these are going to be subscription refs of config because we've already, when we get our result, the no, we're going to actually import the file inside probably somewhere inside build. We're going to actually do like the importing and everything like that.
Yeah. Maybe if you add a type guard, a runtime guard in the config module as well, like is config, because we'll need to use that somewhere.
Indeed. Good idea. Export const. And actually, let me. I should probably be using namespace imports.
Yeah.
Gotta get from. Oh my god.
To be.
Yes, indeed. Is config equals u. No. U is config. And this is going to be get is object.
Maybe you just use has property.
Don't I have to check for is object first, or does has
Has
property do it?
property.
Nice predicate that has property. You type ID.
Brilliant.
Cool. That looks good. Okay. So, do you know what the config is in NeoVim? I have the thing where, like, if I'm scrolling through a file, it gives me like 10 lines before and after. But do you know how to get it to give me empty lines at the end of a file?
Uh,
If not, I can always look it up later. But
no, I can't remember.
all right. This is most likely going to be a generator. So let's think about this for a minute. In our build function, we're going to need to do some stuff. Oh, I forgot to show you guys the other thing that I did off stream last time. I gave us just an easy way to test stuff. So not easy way, I guess, but I added a little CLI package in here, which just has like a really, really simple command line interface for Contentlayer, which just adds a root command for the Contentlayer, like root command, and then it also has two options. So allows you to specify the path to a Contentlayer config file, falling back to pulling from config, and then also adds an option for watch mode. So I thought this would be useful for, like, if we had code that we eventually needed to start running and wanted to like just use a CLI to do it. I added this.
Cool.
So okay, so back to here. Okay. So yeah, there are a bunch of things that we're gonna need to do when we're actually building. I guess the first thing we might want to do is check if there are. No, we already check if there are errors, I think. All right, let's see. So inside,
If the symbol thing is going to work. I'm not sure if there's quite bad testing it.
say that again, Tim.
We need to see if that symbol check is going to work.
We can try to set something up. Let's see. So let's just do. Jeez. I'm gonna return just a dummy empty config from here for now, so that we can just run the check internally. Oh my god, as config.make, and then we'll just do documents.
So does esbuild kind of like compile the TypeScript in the same context somehow? Or?
I don't know the answer to that.
Because if it has closures in the config, I'm not sure what happens there.
I don't think it does, so we may need to rethink this a little bit, but
I mean, you should be able to define functions in your config and have that come through.
true. So, we're going to want to be able to do something like this to test, and then have some config that we read from somewhere. So result, there's a there is a, let me see, in the esbuild result, right, it's an either. We probably want to just get successful esbuild results here, right? Like, I'm thinking that when you have a when you have a config that you define that did not result in a successful esbuild, you probably just like want to stop and not like you can take the result, but then you probably don't want to actually build it. You probably want to log something out to the user and then keep going.
I would want to log the error and then wait for change.
So let's just change this 1 second to build result, which is build. Yeah. And now we should have like the property is on. Okay, so what are we doing here? We are taking the result. We probably want to auto flatten the either and then catch it and do something with it.
Yeah.
Right, that would work.
Or yeah, I guess it's the responsibility of the service to display the errors.
I think that it's the responsibility of this service to display errors related to the config. Not
Config
the
file.
responsible. Yeah, the results coming back. Like all the esbuild service is doing is attempting to build and reporting whether it was an error or a success.
Yeah.
And the config builder should display like error messages to the user if an error occurs. Otherwise, it should build the config and update the subscription ref. So maybe what we can do is flatten either,
Mhm.
and then catch. No. Oh my god, new of him.
Maybe just do like a catch error cause for now and log out the cause.
Catch error cause. Catch all cause. Yeah, this way we don't have to figure out how we're going to display errors yet. Effect.log. Let's just do log nice messages for the user. Okay. So here,
We'll have a successful result now.
yeah. So this is. Say it again.
Do we have a type for a successful result, or is
Yeah.
that
So the esbuild result type is basically an either of. Sorry. Uh, it's basically an either of this, the esbuild result, or an esbuild error. So we're basically getting the raw esbuild result back.
okay?
So
I feel like we should rename one of those because we've got two things of result in the name.
fair enough. What do you? Maybe it makes more sense to.
Success.
So let's do. Um, Just like a type alias, you were saying?
Yeah, I guess so.
If this is an interface, we can make it opaque. Build result. I don't know why my ESLint doesn't read from the config, but whatever. ESBuild success. ESBuild success.
It's ESLint build result, not a record.
Say that one more time, Tim. Sorry.
Is the raw ESBuild result not a compatible type of interface?
No, it is. I think it's an interface.
What's the type of it?
It's saying that I have an empty interface,
Right.
but we have that, I think, turned off in our ESLint config. It's just that I probably don't have something configured right in NeoVim, so need to figure that out. Yeah, okay, so this is, oh, I didn't say that. Hang on. So back here, let's go back here. Okay, so we should have the
Here's warnings.
yeah, I think what we want.
Interesting that has errors on it as well.
So if it has errors on it, it will automatically become an esbuild error. I do that check in the other service. So here, if there's any errors, basically that becomes an esbuild error. We still keep warnings around because eventually we might want to use them in the build like result, maybe to display at like a debug level, or I don't know, make them yellow in the terminal or something.
Yeah.
But why am I not getting? What is this on heavy?
What? It's because you haven't you don't have a arrow after your function declaration.
Thank
Yeah.
you. Okay. So, because what I think we want this meta file thing. I remember
A result from the actual. I want to see what happens. See what we got.
yeah, let's. So yield console.log full result. All right, now let's go back over to our CLI and try to wire this up a little bit. So, unless you think we should just call the service, but I kind of think running it through the CLI might be nice.
Yeah, go through and see that.
So here, we so we need to create the build options service in the environment. So let's actually do this. So we're gonna have a command dot. Some people don't know about these provide APIs that Tim added a while back, but it's really nice because you can add, basically you can use the options and arguments from your CLI to add things to the service or add things to the context that the command handler will use. So like when you have a handler attached to your command, it'll use services that get it that you can add to the environment with these provide APIs, which is pretty nice. And you can make use of the options in args. So here we're going to need config path because we need to, well, actually, before we even do any of this, we need to add the core package as a dependency here. Just make that a little smaller. Filter. So we have we're going to add the core package to the CLI. It's not in the NPM registry. Cool. Control H. Let's see if we just added here content effect, content layer, core, workspace. That. ppm install. And then I think I also need to, I don't think I have it in the TS config. So this is fine. This is fine. No, I need, for the source file, I think I need to references. Sorry for the brief interlude.
It's an array.
Directory up to core. That should be fine. And I think we need to add the build. Not that we need it right now, but we might as well do it while we're here.
I think you only need it on the source one.
You might be right, but I think that I thought we needed the build one to point at the build.
Yeah.
And I could be wrong. Let me look at the effect repo and see how they do it over there. Because we've got things very nicely configured in the effect repo. Yeah, in the build TS config, we have it pointing at the build TS config for the other ones. So core TS config build. Great. That's good. Okay, so we installed it as a workspace dependency and we have it in these two things. We don't have any tests to worry about yet, so should be fine. Let's see if it worked. Build. Actually, let's do this. This is coming from the esbuild service. Cannot find module.
Is the path aliases set up?
Yes, I think so. Let me look.
The base.
Where is the base? There it is.
Yeah.
Maybe I just need to restart my language server.
Maybe.
Yay!
Yes.
I think that worked actually. Let's see. Okay. Build options dot. Uh-oh. Let's try swapping buffers and if that helps. Actually, do I have a can't remember if I have a
This is a tick.
Yep. So export or static live equals layer dot succeed. This is actually going to be a function, which is a layer succeed this options options build. All right, that should be good. Please don't judge me for my file navigation. Build options.
Still not working. Asking for a formatting change. What is that?
Yeah,
Oh,
my LSP is just
that was in reopen.
let's write this. Quit.
You quit. Yep, you can quit.
Okay. Um there we go. Okay. Now we need to specify all of our options, or at least some of them. So let me look this up really quick. I had listed some of the ones I know we need out somewhere. Okay, so I think that we want the absolute apps working dir. Okay, don't judge me for that. We're gonna need bundle. Yeah. We're gonna want entry points. And for now, maybe we just point this directly at a content layer config that we know where it's going to be.
We've already got our content path, right?
Oh yeah, we do. Um,
It's an option.
hmm
Uh,
Why is it an wait a minute? Why is it option?
yeah, we
Oh,
need
because it can default to okay, so option dot get.
but surely the default will be part of the option.
Um, Probably yes, eventually. The
Kind of
There,
format big.
yeah, we could just make the fallback like could just make it to default to like
You can just do with default, can you?
yeah, I kind of I wanted to maybe include some logic to also allow like a potentially a JavaScript file and everything like that, but I think that for now we'll just do this as like default uh content like yes. Great. Um uh, we don't want it to log stuff. We do want this thing. The out file is let's see what happens if I do that. Platform is node, and I think this is maybe all we need for now. Oh, I want to have entry names be um, name. Yeah. Okay. So now we should have our build options in the environment because provide lets you take a layer, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. And now our handler. Um, does our handler? Do we even need a handler? Like, does our handler need to do anything right now?
Well, we've only got build options right now, so we'll need to.
Yeah, I think
Oh,
the rest of like the rest of the services, I was thinking we could provide like inside the. I mean, we could provide them in line here. Like inside here, or we could do what we've done in other like programs and provide them here.
well, currently, are we? So, what's config builder doing? Is it currently continuously building the stream?
Yeah,
Okay,
just builds
yeah.
from the stream, and the esbuild thing also just reads build options. So what we could potentially do is take our own advice.
If you just do layer.provide.
Tim, stop adding me like that. Okay, get rid of this. This looks pretty good. Right, this is good.
Yeah.
Don't have it in Harpoon, so I have to go back. Whoa, how did I do that? I have no idea how I did that. That's great. Okay, so main live. So let's just have to be. Let's see. Hmm. We haven't provided the esbuild, the build whatchamacallit here yet. And actually, we need to do this in Scratch pad maybe. I set up a scratch pad for us as well. So probably want the config builder.
You probably need to edit inside the command.provide because we'll need the build options on it.
Won't it? I forget how the context propagates down. Does stuff in command.provide get access to stuff, or vice versa? Does stuff in the outside get access to the stuff in the command? It does not, right?
No, because it's like an onion.
It's an onion. All right, so man, I really hope nobody watches me navigating through my files like this, but so oops. Config builder dot live dot provide dot pipe, and then layer dot provide. All right, I gotta import layer. This is fine, right? I don't need namespaced imports here. We're just importing a single thing from the files. That's fine. Import everything as layer. Cool. This command should now have its environment satisfied. Does.
I wonder if we
Cool.
need a Effectful.
No, we won't because, well, we shouldn't. I'm going to say we shouldn't. However, of course we might. But the reason I say we shouldn't is because if I go back to...
It's forked. So it's going to construct immediately.
Well, this, yes. But here, not here. Oh, no. This. Here. I believe this will keep the process open.
But well, it really shouldn't be keeping a layer constructor open. A layer constructor should always kind of like run immediately.
Well, we couldn't. So there is an API that esbuild provides where we could wrap this with our own file watcher, but I wanted to just prototype with their built-in file watcher initially.
Context.watch do.
Say it again.
What does context.watch do?
It watches basically the here, I'll open this. You guys won't be able to see it, but I'll pass this to you, and I'll also open it. Basically, it listens for changes on the file system and rebuilds whenever a file changes that could invalidate the...
Yeah. So is it kind of like effect.never?
Basically.
I feel like we should do this properly and just fork scope it. Anyway. Or does it take an abort control or anything? Can we?
Let's see. I don't actually think watch takes...
How do you stop it?
So I think watch options are actually, it's like an empty interface.
So we'll dispose of it.
So rebuild would be the API that we could use, or we could dispose the build context, which I do here if we need to. But the proper way to do this, I guess, would be to use our own file watcher, and rebuild on changes to that. Because rebuild is like their imperative API for rebuilding.
I think for now, if we just call context.watch outside of effective promise and this add a finalizer that calls cancel.
I wonder, does this get back? Is cancel the API we're supposed to call to cancel watch mode? Because we could, I mean, we could do this properly if we wanted, because we are gonna have access to. We could take 5 minutes and hook this up to a watcher, file system watcher, if you want. This Sebastian, I'm putting that one up on the stream. Why don't we just do it properly, Tim? I feel like that's the right thing to do.
Okay.
Let's do this. I also am just going to take 2 minutes and convert these imports. And then the last one. Q. Okay, file system.file system. All right, Tim. Help me out with this. My brain is it's late in the day for me, and my brain is not working on all cylinders. So, we need to watch. We need to watch our config path. Is there anything in here?
What watch APIs are there again? I think there's a watch file as well. Yeah, did not. It probably does it automatically. We need to watch the config path, or we won't have that here. We'll have the entry points.
Yeah, it's gonna suck. I have to convert.
Can we just call context.watch and call it a day? Or
All right, fine. So what do you want me to do with?
just remove the effective promise and then just let it run? Because we've already got context.dispose there in the finalizer.
Like so?
Yep. Just fire off the side effect and let it run.
Let it run. Clear up this terminal. Okay.
But it will mean we need to keep the CLI running with effect on him or something.
That's fine. Maybe we can put that in the command handler. If we trigger watch mode, we could just do effect.never. But for now, I'm just going to literally drop an effect.never in there. Command with handler. This takes a function, right?
Yep. Nice.
Yeah. This looks pretty good. Okay. This looks good. All right, let's see what happens.
You probably need to write a config
Oh yeah.
file.
It would actually be good to see like if we actually get an error.
Okay.
This is called main. Okay, I get the help. And why do I get the help?
Yeah, you should get the help.
Going back to the CLI.
But I think
Hmm. Did I not write this out?
is it actually logging anything at the top of
There we go. I just didn't write it out.
it? Didn't save.
It's because I'm so used to in VS Code, I had like autosave turned on, and I'm really trying to not do that in NeoVim because I feel like it goes against the religion. All right, this is good. We've got things happening. This is good. I'll try not to utter the editor that shall not be named again, Dylan. My bad. All right, so now we need a config file.
You just need to say "I love NeoVim" 3 times, and then you're healed.
It's like Beetlejuice, except the opposite. My working directory when I trigger this should still be the parent directory, right? So I can add a contentlayer.config.ts here, and that should be fine. Maybe. Guess we'll find out. Um, okay. Look at that.
Object and inputs.
Hell yeah. Okay. This is progress, ladies and gentlemen. This is great. So
Can we make that input name more deterministic, or
how do you mean?
because we're going to have to work out the right input key to extract that object?
Yes.
Well, I guess we'll only ever have one entry point.
Well, I think maybe what would be useful is so Contentlayer has like a directory that it creates for you, right? It at least the current implementation. It creates like a dot directory called dot contentlayer, and it outputs like pretty much everything that it generates into there. And then it generates like a mock package that it writes to be able to like actually import from it. But maybe what we can do is have another service that we create that just holds a reference to like the computed names for our um, content layer config, the artifact direct, like basically like the artifact directory itself, like the full path, absolute path to the artifact directory, absolute path to like the cache directory, all of those things, and also has like a reference to the content layer config name, um, which we can then use as the entry point here instead of using the config path directly. I don't know if that makes any sense. Was that you were referring to, or were you referring to this path right here?
Um, well, we just need to extract that object. Or do we want that? We want the outputs, don't we?
I think we want. I think we want. Um.
Can we see what's in the outputs?
Yeah. Let me change the. This. Maybe Dylan knows what the config is to fix my. Dylan, do you know what the config is so that when I'm going down in a file, like I have the thing when I scroll that it gives me a 10-line buffer on either side. Do you know?
I did find it,
You did find it?
but you were in the middle or something, so I didn't interrupt you. It's called scroll off, I think.
Scroll off. I thought that was the name of the one that I have enabled that gives me a 10-line buffer. But maybe it is not. I'll take a look. Okay. Rerunning. Cool. So we definitely want this. And we can make the outputs more deterministic. In fact, I think in the current version of Contentlayer, I believe this output name is fixed to something like this, where it's like contentlayer.config dot, or hang on a minute, it's called, I'll look at what it's called. It's called this, compiled content layer config dash hash dot mjs. This is like the current like deterministic name that we give. So like in the build options, we could basically specify this as the output file. So the output file would be like compiled content layer config, I think, or something like that.
Where is it put in that file right now? Just in the same place?
Well, yeah, I think it is putting it in the current working directory, which is my root directory here.
Yes.
But event like that's why I thought like having an artifacts service or something like that might be helpful, because this way we only need to compute the absolute paths of like the content layer directory and like all of those paths once, and then we can just use that service to grab the name when we need to like output files, because we're going to be like outputting documents a lot. We're also going to be writing to potentially like a file system cache or maybe a configurable cache. So we could, maybe the next time we meet, we could like quickly write up a little artifact service that stores the names of all those directories so we know where we're putting all this stuff. But maybe as like the last thing we do today, we can just see if we can get this name to be a little more deterministic. So I am pretty sure, let me just look this up really quick. Pretty sure.
So we've got using text as the name.
Yeah, so the out file path, we basically want,
I guess I would have a .content layer folder.
exactly. So this will be like a compiled content layer. And we don't even need to call it this. We could just call it like compiled or whatever, because this is going to go, this thing is going to go in a
Directory
doc.
here.
Yeah, I mean you can specify a full path here. I think this takes like an absolute path. But I
So
think that
you
like
get content layer slash.
I think the directory has to exist. Like we can try. We can try. Let's see. Dot content layer. Actually, let's just grab this for a second. Look at this is probably like the last thing we'll do today, and then I gotta head out, unfortunately. Yeah, so if there are multiple entry points, you have to use the outdir option, but outfile is the output file name for the build operation. I think we can actually I think the absolute working directory might be the directory for the build.
Okay.
So this I think is actually the place where we'd want to go, like dot content layer. And then this we can just call like compiled big or something like that, or
Need to
use
resolve Contentlayer because it seems like it wants absolute.
yeah. I'm gonna do the dirty thing right now because I just want to see if this works. Um, I thought that this had to exist, so we can test that now, but I'm pretty sure it has to exist. Maybe not. Did I not save this? Pretty sure I saved this. Yeah. Where yeah, not getting very good message, but that's probably because I made the error not good. But if we go and create a uh, and then we rerun this.
Did you create a .contentlayer file server directory?
I don't know. I also don't know how to show hidden files with oil.
Maybe terminal.
Say it again.
Maybe just use the shell.
Um,
Yeah, it's a file.
yeah. Make dir dot content. Cool. H dot content layer. Cool. And if we cat out that, yep, it's empty. Wait a minute.
Should it be empty? Oh, there's 0 bytes in our config file.
Yeah, I mean our config file I think is headed to
Okay.
but this is good. I feel like this is a really good, really good start to getting our config wired up and nice and reactive. I feel like the next time we can probably continue working on the build. We can test out like whether or not the whole like config check thingy works. Yeah, I think this is good though. So yeah, hope everybody enjoyed our stream today. And Yeah, thank you very much, Tim, for hanging out.
Cool.
And we'll see you guys next time.
Good. See ya.